Jon Rutigliano, welcome back to the Rocky Mountain Writer podcast.
Thanks, Mark. Good to talk with you again.
Great to have you on again. I checked, it was February of 2022, so about 18 months or so. No, 22 months, if I can do my math correctly, since we had a chance to catch up. And we got a few different topics to touch on, and we will get to sort of the marquee topic today, which is helping folks get familiar with and introduce them to the whole writing world of Substack, which you have jumped on and started really taking advantage of. We'll get to that, but we know you play an active role at the Colorado Gold Conference this last year, and you will again next year, especially in the area of helping set up all those agent pitching sessions and being there to help ease nerves and things like that during the actual conference. But let's start there. Just tell us, just take us back to Colorado Gold this year. How did it go from your perspective?
Yeah, it was a packed house. It was a full schedule on that Saturday that we were doing the pitching. I had lots of great help as well, but it was a very packed year. And that particular Saturday, the schedule was booked. I would say we had over 160 pitch sessions to cover in that time frame. We had 6 agents. I think that was just the right amount of agents this year. Really strong agents were there. Mira Landry really helped, obviously, get them. I participated in selecting some of them as well, but Mira gets all the credit for that. And it was just a really pleasant day. We had that big ballroom that was established, and we started first thing in the morning, and we stayed on schedule the whole time. And it was very successful. I would say I heard lots of people coming out of the room saying, I got a request for more pages, or even a few got a few full manuscripts. So my gut tells me that, in the months that have subsequently passed, I bet you a few of our fellow Rocky Mountain fiction writer authors have landed an agent or editor or something of that nature. So I was really pleased with how that whole event went all through Colorado Gold last year. Although we were missing somebody, Mark. You weren't there. I know you weren't feeling well. Yeah. But I remember ZJ put up, put the screen on all of us and gave you a big shout out during the session. We missed you there.
Oh, thanks.
Your presence was there, though.
Oh, thanks. I certainly wish I could have been there, and just one of my favorite weekends of the year for sure.
Yeah.
So 160 pitch sessions, that's a whole lot of book ideas and presentations. Why do you think it was successful? What was the key? I mean, I agree with you. The agent lineup was great. I interviewed Alex Shane and Nikki Terpolowski on the podcast. And they were both fantastic. In fact, those interviews are still getting lots of listens. It's fantastic. But what makes for a great day of pitching? It's hard to. It sounds like chaos, but you've got to set a tone of just calm as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in terms of the work that I do from the pitch desk perspective, it's just keeping things moving and keeping things on track. So the agents inside the ballroom, as it is at this conference center, they're not really paying attention to time. They're just simply paying attention to the person that's in front of them, given their pitch session. So my objective is to make sure that there's like a 2-minute warning. So I will pop my head in and kind of give, the 2-minute session, like coming to a close, time to wrap up. And then just making sure that there's a hard cutoff time right at that 10-minute interval that they've got to pitch. And I stick to it. So I will kind of politely just say it's time to go, and people will line up behind them. But that's really the key to keeping things moving along, is making sure that those sessions end timely within 10 minutes. Scheduling some breaks, making sure the agents are well caffeinated. All of those other things help too. But so that's where I think that the key to success is, and just making sure that everything is scheduled and organized in advance, and you have a game plan going in. And so that's how I think of them as being successful. And I think that's 2 years. This is my second year doing this, and I'm on the books for next year. And believe it or not, Mark, we're Mira and I have actually already started. We're going to start in January, coming back at it and trying to schedule some agents for next year's conference already. So the work does, you get a little break, a little holiday
Yeah.
break, and then you're just kind of back at it again. So I really look forward to we last year we had a lot of agents that expressed some interest but just couldn't make it for some reason or another, and so those are the first ones we're going to reach back out to, and I think we're going to have 6 agents, really strong agents again in no time. So next year is already lining up to be just as productive as this year.
Very good. Wow. Yeah, I guess one question occurs to me is there a better way in terms of that 10-minute pressure cooker session? It just seems it's ubiquitous. It's around the country. Every conference like ours does it that way. It's just part of the culture of fiction writers looking for agents is to go to these pitch sessions, and you hear varying lengths around the country. Some are 5 or 12 or maybe 15 at the outside, but it's always just, I mean, there is a skill and there's a reason why I think writers have to be able to articulate their idea and do it in a fairly succinct fashion. But I also kind of wonder, is there a better way?
Honestly, I think the previous year we experimented with some online work and things like this, and uh, I don't know if there's necessarily a better way other than to do it manually or solicit just through websites. But in the when I talk to the agents before the sessions, they all really enjoy coming to conference and doing live pitch sessions. So from my perspective, this is a really strong way to introduce yourself. And when you're at conference, even if you don't necessarily feel that you are prepared or ready, and there's a lot of that, it's such a unique opportunity to get in front of an agent, pitch your idea, get comfortable in that setting, even if it's an abject no, right? Even if it really goes terribly, it can all go awry quickly. But I still think it's the best mechanism because you grow from that, you learn from that, and then the following year you can come back stronger. But going in, I would say it's really, you have that 10 minutes, which is, for some people it's a real long time, and they're done in
Yeah,
like minutes. They just have that sort of elevator pitch prepared, and others I think can go on and on and on. A lot of it is your personality as well. Obviously your story idea is critical, but I think that the agents are also looking for someone that is relatable, that they can market, that they can sell. So practice, know your genre, practice in a mirror, sit in front of a camera, whatever it takes to be prepared. Come in with a strong idea, and if you haven't done it yet, if you're listening to this podcast, try to come in. It's such a beautiful opportunity that Rocky Mountain Fiction Writer gives you. Schedule one, at least get on the books, and then I'll help you when you get there. Make sure everything's squared away. But I honestly think it's a good way. So
yeah,
as for a better
yeah,
way, I don't
yeah,
know. I don't think so.
yeah.
I like this way.
That's great. I think there is certain advantage to it in terms of, like I said, just I think it does not force, but I think it does, create the opportunity for the writer to really, focus what is their story, what is the message. Um,
Yeah. And
you're going to
agents
have
have
to,
an opportunity to give you feedback live. So they have to say something. They're not going to sit there dumbfounded. You're going to get some immediate critical feedback, and
yeah,
that'll only help you learn. So it's a good way.
yeah, yeah, and good way to practice. You might be scared out of your mind the first year, and next year it's better and better, just down the road the more you talk about it, the better you get. Yeah,
Absolutely. And
yeah,
so if you're listening, come to conference, pitch your agent next year. It'll be lots of fun.
yeah, yeah. That's great. Um, so did you say you already have your cast of agents for next year, or you'll soon have that?
We'll soon have that. We had
Yeah,
some good people that couldn't make it in 2023 that said, "Hey, call me next year." So we're going to start in January, getting these agents on the books for September of 2024. So it starts really early, but we have to make sure that all the accommodations can be made and arrangements done. So it starts early. So us volunteers, we're back at it again.
yeah, that's great. Very good. Well, thank you for all you do for RMFW in that sense. You see yourself doing that for a while?
I I love doing it. So as
Yeah.
long as the conference chairs want me to come back, I'm all in. So it's a lot of fun for me. I get to meet people at kind of these vulnerable moments and help them through that. And I've made some great friends that way too. So I have no reason not to, Mark. So I'm in for as long as they want me.
Yeah. Very good. Well, let's shift over to Substack. And you reached out to me, which I really appreciate in terms of just suggesting an idea that we talk about Substack. I listen to several podcasts that are constantly talking about things that are on Substack. You go online anymore, and many, many, many authors will have their own Substacks going. It seems to be just a rich world. Why don't you, first of all, tell us a little bit about how you got, how you made that decision to dive into Substack, and for those who don't know, describe it.
Yeah. So just real high level, Substack is an online platform. It has an app available for your phone as well. So you could download this app and you can search out any host of writers within Substack. So I point out that it's not necessarily all fiction authors at this point. In fact, I would say it's probably most known for maybe journalism, things of this nature, and it's really popular in that sense. But I do know that Substack is attempting to grow and expand their fiction presence. And a few people are jumping over to Substack. A lot of it is to maybe just to give advice or to present information on how to write. So there's a lot of that in the Substack community. But I decided to join for a slightly different reason, and it really started for me a little bit over a year ago when I got done publishing my first book back in 2020, Reclamation. I wanted to make sure that I connected. I grew an audience, and I wanted to make sure I stayed connected with them because I do believe that a book is as good as a book is, but a lot of people are connected to an author. And so I worked really hard to try to market myself as an author and as a person. And I felt maybe Substack was a mechanism in which I could communicate directly with them in between maybe novels, right? Something that can take a long time. And I didn't want to sort of disappear into never land. So Substack is what I started as a way to just keep connected with them. And I titled my Substack Timberline. That's the name of it. Some might call it sort of a newsletter, but it's a Substack. And it's a subscription based model. So if you go on to Substack, you can subscribe for free or you can do a paid option. Most of my stuff is there for free, but occasionally I do some special stuff that's for paid. And this is also a good way to help support and supplement authors. But I started this I called it Timberline because as you know, it's the point above which there's no vegetation. And there's a part of me that believes we all sort of metaphorically live our life at that level, right? So above is desolation and isolation, and below is sort of that abundance filled with everything we need. And I feel like maybe people are balancing act right there at that timberline point. And I wanted to establish this online Substack community where we feel less alone and more try to gravitate more towards that abundant life we all seek. So I decided to do this with what I knew best, and that's fiction. So I started writing some short stories just occasionally on there, and my audience grew a little bit. And so you have to keep producing. That's one of the struggles of Substack. You got to keep trying to get stuff out there. But I decided to start with some fiction just to keep current. And since then, the one thing that's great about Substack is there's really no rules. No one's telling you what to do. So I can really experiment with my voice. And this could be good or bad, I suppose. But I think short fiction, this is a really good platform for that. I tend to gravitate towards short fiction. Uh, it's morphed into other things. So I can talk about my children and little sweet stories about my children. And I can talk about some philosophy. I've dropped some poetry on there. I do immersive reading. So on the Substack, you can record your voice. So I'll do my own storytelling and some of it's immersive. So I'll add some sound effects and I create some original artwork for the stories. All the stories have some kind of artwork associated with it too, some digital art, and I'll prepare that. So it's really connecting, I think, with my audience. So I've got short stories in there from like a crazed barbershop hitman who's change of heart when he befriends an alpaca, to a child whose curiosity about a pretend war leads him to believe that is leads him to understand that his parents have actually abandoned him emotionally, all the way to a lobster fisherman whose first adventure on the high seas leads to a false identity. So this is sort of the advantage. I don't have to necessarily be pigeonholed to one type of story, and I'm free to explore any type of voice that I'd like to. This has some advantages and maybe some disadvantages
Mhm.
as well, depending on
Oh,
which.
you're showing your range. You're showing your range. Yeah.
Yeah, you can show your range, and you can sort of challenge yourself and say, I want to do a story about this, and it takes you out of your comfort zone. It comes with some risk because your audience might have sort of an expectation of what they'd like to hear from you, and if they hear something that's sort of out of left field,
Mhm.
you run that risk. But it's so much fun because you can really explore that range. The other challenges include obviously the volume of work you want to sort of produce on a regular basis. I don't think you can go too long without putting stories out there, which is why I started venturing into you know some some other things like true stories, interview series. I interviewed Lynn Klasavich, who is an equestrian community hero here in the Parker, Colorado region. Susie Brooks, who many of you from Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers might know, and we talked about everything, a whole host of things from the industry to magic mushrooms. So there's
Yeah.
just a whole range of things that you can go with to try to keep your audience entertained and connected. And I feel like it's working. The audience is growing, and it's the onus of responsibility is on me to make sure that people are engaged in a way that keeps it entertaining, lighthearted, and fun for everybody.
Kind of two questions. How do you find new people to subscribe to your Substack? How do you push that out? And then are you setting a goal for yourself in terms of the number of things you're posting every week or every month?
Yeah. So first question is word of mouth. That's really the best way. The one in other forms of social media. So I will post something on Substack and I'll put it on my Facebook page, for example. And if people are still using Twitter, you can put that kind of stuff out there and just try to Instagram, whatever. I've got some art, so that's why I do that, to try to appeal to those kind of things, to draw people in. But it's the main force behind it is referrals or recommendations. So there are options within Substack so the readers can share it with other people that they think might enjoy that. So for me, the best mechanism for growth has been people doing that, or just people sharing to their own social media pages as well, and that sort of starts expanding the breadth of the newsletter. So I don't necessarily have, as far as a print schedule, that becomes trickier. When I first
Yeah.
started, I was gangbusters, and I was, every week I was putting something out there. But Mark, it's not easy to come up with a short story every week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I will sometimes serialize short stories if I have one that's longer. I will put it out in maybe 2 or 3 sections. I try to keep the actual Substack to maybe a 10-minute read. I really feel as if that's important because I just want people to be able to get a little. Also, I'm a fan of short stories, but I want people to have sort of this little nugget of fun for about 10 minutes, like just exhale, go on their phone, they can log on to Substack and they could read something for 10 minutes and feel really good. And that's how I feel as if it could work. Some authors serialize their novels on Substack, and I feel like I don't really want to go there because it could take a year or so to kind of put
Yeah.
chapter after chapter out there, and I just don't know if I could. I don't know if people would stick around that long, want to wait or stuff like that. So I don't think it's necessarily a place for novels. The authors try. For me, it's been I will say moderately successful with short stories, and now I'm going to venture into other aspects too.
Before we forget, let's tell people how to find you on Substack. It's Jon Christian Timberline. Is that how they'd search?
Yep. Yes. If you are look on Substack, you can search Jon Christian. I think I'm there. There might be another Jon Christian out there, but my Substack is called Timberline. And when you find that, you can click on that, and it brings you to a subscribe page. But you can always check it out by selecting. I think it says "Continue Reading" underneath there, and you can read it first, see if it's something you're interested in, and then if if you're down for it, just enter your email. It comes to your inbox. So when I drop a post, it goes right to your inbox, or you can get the app, download the app, and it'll actually notify you whenever I drop a new story. So it's
That's
pretty cool.
that's great. Do you find yourself following other Substack accounts? And are there any, if so, if there are any you'd recommend that are just particularly robust?
Yeah, there are a few. So there, like I said, some authors would talk about short stories, or they talk about how to create short stories, or just fiction in general. So there's one of my favorite ones out there is called Fictionistas, and they just do regular weekly information where fiction writers can get together across the globe. And so they can, if you subscribe to them, you get great uh, articles that are written by various fiction authors about how to craft your, how to craft, how to function. Just think of it as like an online version of Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers, really.
Yeah,
And just a community of, sometimes it's just people just trying to sort things out and just talking with each other, interactively. They even do monthly just virtual sessions that end up getting recorded, and they talk about how to improve fiction, and the use of Substack for fiction, and it's been an interesting sort of experience. So you can literally find almost anything you're looking for on Substack. And so if you can sort of parse through the stuff that doesn't work, you can find exactly the stuff that you're looking for or interested in. If you're into gardening, if you're into this or that, so it's so much more
yeah,
than um, but it's a great community, and I kind of enjoy it. And for authors, it's a subscription based model, which is I think sort of a unique way to approach writing. And I don't know if that's controversial or not, but it's just
no,
another way that you can,
monetize.
if you can monetize it, and you can
Yeah,
have people that subscribe and pay on a monthly basis for your services, and or just to read what you want to do. So it's in a world where it's really difficult for authors to find ways to make money. You know, I'm trying to maybe experiment with something that can grow and grow, and we'll see. Not quite there yet,
absolutely.
but maybe we'll
Yeah,
get there someday. So we'll
yeah.
see.
Well, didn't Charles Dickens? I mean, they serialized every book was really a series of chapters, and he'd sell each chapter as they came off, and ultimately that would lead up to a book being published. But
Yeah,
nothing's changed. In some ways, it's
yeah.
nothing wrong with that, as far as I could tell.
I think you're right, Mark. It's sort of
Yeah,
a nod to the throwback of days when maybe they would publish a chapter in, like, I don't know, the New York Times or something like that,
yeah,
and kind of grow from there. So it's the modern version of that.
yeah. So, for those folks who want to find out about your novel, they can certainly go back and listen to the February 2022 interview we did with you about reclamation. And there's a lot of information in that podcast about that. Are you working on another novel, and is Substack detracting from your productivity on a sequel or a follow-up?
Yeah, I would say yes to that. It has, because I've been trying to
Pleading
grow
guilty.
that.
You're pleading
Yeah,
guilty to
I've been
that.
trying to grow the Substack audience more than I probably should be paying attention to working on my next novel. But I do have some ideas for them, and in a weird way, the Substack has really helped me, because I've written some short stories now that I feel like have some legs to. This is another bonus, right? So I've created these little short stories, and some of these I think I could. I have now an outline for almost all of them to potentially turn themselves into novels. And so I just need to find the time to sort of piece that together, and keep focusing on that. But yes, I'm guilty as charged. I've been sort
Yeah.
of spending my time trying to grow the Substack audience, and facilitating that. But it's not a replacement for my interest in writing my next novel as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know how many followers you have? And is that something you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, it started with zero. I didn't have a whole lot of people to, some other thing that I could bring people on board in. So I'm about 100 some odd.
Hey,
Over 100, and that's I don't know. I don't, so for me,
yeah,
that's good. Maybe, I mean, I know
yeah,
popular folks on there have thousands, and I'm not close to that, but it's something that's, as you know, as a writer, Mark, I just love writing. And so if I can get it out there and people are reading it and enjoying it, then if I can make one person of that 100 smile for the day, then I'm more than willing to continue to its continuation. And so that brings me a lot of joy. And there's mostly just readers. There's not a lot of other authors on there and things like that. And so when you get, some of them are people I know, right?
yeah,
Which is fine. And I'm almost more nervous about that sometimes because, I don't have these things are raw. This is raw fiction. So sometimes I catch a typo or something I feel like I could say better and I try to go back in and edit it. But that's also a risk. I really want to put quality work out there. You can't sacrifice that. You can't put garbage out there. At least you want to continue that quality of work. But yeah, but then there's some people I have no idea. I have no idea who they are, where they live, or anything like that. And it's fun. It's fun to see when someone subscribes, and I'm like, don't know who that is. Not my mom. So yay.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, and so and that's why I appreciate forums like this, and we can maybe get more word out there and things like that. But either way, I'm going to keep writing and keep sharing on that.
yeah. Well, and just a quick glance at your Substack, which I did, it seems like you do enjoy so many different forms. You mentioned you had some poems that turned into short stories and or flash fiction that kind of expanded and became a longer short story, and that you were mentioning that maybe a short story would take on even a longer form down the
Yeah.
road. I think in some ways it sounds to me, and I certainly believe in this, that you just need to write. And if you go in one direction with something, you never know what direction it might take until you get words on a page and start to see it, start to feel it, start to see what shape it's going to take. Until you put those first words on the page, you have nothing. So maybe Substack in a way is maybe creating a little kind of a little reminder in your head every week or so to say, you better be writing.
100%, Mark. Yeah, it keeps me writing, right? And where it is, when you have people that are maybe expecting work, it keeps you having to engage your head in that because it's very easy to feel like, I don't know, I don't have the words, I'm not really sure what to say. And then those days still exist, and that's why maybe I'll tell some poem or write a little poetry, or I've had like an arsenal of poetry from God knows how long ago,
Yeah, yeah,
So sometimes I'll pull some of those out, but I'll tell the story behind what I was thinking and what maybe more what that poem means, for example. And so there's so many different things avenues that you could pull, but you're writing, and whether that's fiction or it's some true story and how you feel, or like I said about my kids, or something I wrote a tale about me sitting in the car line and how annoyed I was sitting in the car line with my kids because it was snowing and it was a bad day and I was frustrated. I was late for work. I was late for a meeting. My kids are back there. I'm 20 miles back from the car line, and my story was about just taking how I felt and then taking a moment to realize I should maybe be taking advantage of this extra time that I've got with my kids, and reminding people that maybe there are ways that we can control our emotions and find the good side of bad situations, because sometimes those make even for good stories as well. So it's sometimes therapeutic for me, and I hope that in some small way it helps other people maybe want to put their own words down, or own thoughts down into words, or explore fiction to the best of their abilities as well.
well, that's great. Very good. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for this rundown on
Yeah.
Substack World. Fantastic. Um, as we wrap up, we always like to give our guests a chance to promote a book or another writer, somebody you've been reading recently or an all-time favorite, doesn't matter. So now's your chance to kind of pay it forward a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, oh, my all-time favorite writer doesn't count. I mean, it's Stephen King. I mean, I've been reading him forever and a day, but I'm a
He
fan of
he
short fiction,
he
and I picked up this book called Liberation Day, and I've been reading it. It's by George Saunders. He actually does a lot of work on Substack as well. I subscribe to his. I don't know him, but I subscribe to his Substack, and he talks a lot about, um, you know, how to write fiction and tells his stories as well. So it's I like just love short fiction, and I think this gives you some really good short fiction as well. So that's my recommendation for the day.
Yeah, I'm a big George Saunders fan. For some reason, I couldn't get into that particular volume. I don't know what it
Yeah.
was. It was just a little too out there, and I'm not I'm not here to debate. I
No.
love
Yeah.
George Saunders, but
Yeah.
for some reason, I just felt like I'd kind of read some of that kind of approach before from him, and I don't know.
Yeah.
He's always doing these futuristic, like you know, oh, I don't know, settings with these playgrounds and these what do you call them? The like Disneyland, but a futuristic Disneyland or something like that. And he's
Yeah.
just got he's got an active mind, and yeah,
Yep.
but
Well, then how about this? All right, how about this? Because the other one I'm actively reading, Mark, is a certain book called The Fireballer.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I absolutely love it.
Now
So
that
that's my
book
big
rocks.
recommendation.
That's a good one.
Mark Stevens, The
I
Fireballer.
I won't disagree with you on that. You're not supposed to mention my book, but that's okay.
I
I'm
know.
just
Too
I'm
late.
kidding. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But
Yeah.
back really quick to
Sure.
George Saunders, his book where he took apart all the Russian short stories and he analyzed them. And I'm blanking on the title right now. I actually read it twice. His book on writing and his analysis of those Chekhov and Tolstoy and amazing
Yeah.
analysis of how to write and why those the Dostoevsky was another one, just why those stories work so well.
Why they were. And so on his Substack, actually, he talks a lot about this kind of stuff and really gets, and that's what's the beauty of Substack, where now he doesn't necessarily put a lot of fiction out there, but he talks a lot about the art of fiction on that
Yeah.
Substack. And there's free content and there's paid content. And so, it's another way that authors can connect to their audience, and you can literally put in comments if you want and talk directly to authors, and most of the folks on there respond. And so it's just another mechanism of the future, perhaps a little Substack.
Yeah. Yeah. John, thanks so much. We will catch up with you again down the road. And if nothing else, we'll
Yeah,
see you next year, Colorado Gold.
absolutely. Mark, thanks so much, really appreciate it, and have a great day.